Welcome to the Fearfully and Wonderfully Me podcast, a podcast designed to help you increase your influence, develop your leadership, and maximize your results.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's podcast episode on the power of effective communication. Actually, I could call this episode the power of effective connection, because that's really what I want to talk about today. Relative to how this applies, number one, to increasing your influence. I've touched on this before, but it bears repeating. Influence is based on relationships. Relationships are built on trust. And our ability to communicate and our ability to connect is directly impacting our ability to influence. So, what do I mean when I say connection? I mean, we all know about communication, right? There's a lot of awareness there that we need to be able to be an effective communicator in order to increase influence with people. Well, what does that look like? Communication is really just about transferring the information, right? You can send an email that can communicate information. You can say something to someone that can communicate information, thoughts, feelings, ideas, anything like that. But connection is actually connecting to the person on an emotional level so that when you do communicate, your communication is effective. Because if you don't have that connection, it's kind of like a lamp that's not plugged into the wall very well. And so the electricity doesn't flow through, and so the light won't come on. Right? If you're not connected to someone, then it's really hard to influence them at a deep level. Because there's just the message isn't getting through, just like the electricity isn't getting through to the light bulb. So connection is our ability to really establish that relationship and that emotional connection, and that is going to increase the effectiveness of communication 100,000 fold. Connection is the multiplier for your communication. But I think so much of the time we spend time and energy thinking about the communication of the message itself, and we could be so much more effective if we would spend more time thinking about the connection that should come first. Now, this is much, much, much more intuitive for some people than others, and I get that. Connection is one of those things that I had to learn to be more effective at because I'm naturally a very task-oriented person. And, whether you are more task-oriented or people-focused, there's not a this is better than, or that's a better way to be, or it's just simply being aware of where your natural inclination is and recognizing when you need to step out of that or step away from that. So, for example, task focused for me, when let's say I go out and I buy groceries and run errands, and I've been gone for a long time, and then I come home and I walk in the door and I'm task focused. And so I want to get all of the groceries brought in and put away. I want to, get all of the things from running errands sorted, whatever that means, receipts or notifying books of being shipped, whatever it is. I want to get all of the things done as soon as I walk in the door. And that's just, I'm a task person. I'm a to-do person. That makes me incredibly effective at getting things done relative to managing tasks, accomplishing things. But I've had to realize that when I walk in the door and I've been gone for a while, I need to stop and connect and touch back in with Mac because I've been gone for a while. Hey, what What went on while I was gone? Did you get an email? Or maybe I just mostly just need to listen to what he's got to say, right? Just check in. And I've learned that the groceries can wait. I mean, unless it's like ice cream and you got to get it in the freezer right now, right? But what I have to remember is that if I want to increase that connection, I need to be intentional about stepping away of my natural task mindset and focusing on the relationship, the connection piece. Now, there again, whether you're task focused or more person, people, relationship focused, just be aware of that natural inclination. Are you a to do the things person, or are you more of a people person? There's no right or wrong here. It's just awareness. So, our ability to connect is multiplying the ability to communicate. So, for example, if you send an email to someone, and maybe you've experienced this, if you send an email to someone, but you don't really know them very well, you're probably trying to spend a lot more time on how you word the email. And I mean, that's natural, that's normal, right? But because you don't have a great relationship with them, you spend a lot, hopefully, you spend a little bit more time on the front end making sure that whatever you're trying to communicate in that email is not offensive or doesn't get misunderstood, or you don't want to come across the wrong way. And so if you don't know the person very well, you're spending a lot more time on the front end trying to communicate in the way that increases your influence and increases the effect of whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. Where very, versus if you have a great relationship with that person, you can kind of just sit down and, type out a couple of quick sentences and send off the email, because you already have, maybe it's a coworker that you have a great relationship with already. And so you don't have to be worried too much about offending them or asking for help in the wrong way or whatever it is. So, but a lot of times we spend more time and effort and energy on the communication piece, and we don't spend enough time on the connection side of things, right? Being intentional with building the relationship. Now, the reason this is all important is because particularly when you get to like an emergency or a crisis or a situation where you need something urgently, it's too late to go back and build influence right then in that moment, right? You've got to get something done. You got to get something accomplished quickly. And maybe there's an emergency or something's urgent. And so you don't have time necessarily to start from scratch and build a relationship, but you need the influence in that moment, and you need it quickly, and you need it at a great level. So you have to be intentional about, before you ever get to that point, increasing your influence and building the relationship. And to me, when I talk about this really comes to mind as impactful with your kids. You have to be intentional about building that trust and that relationship when they are younger, so that when they get to be a teenager, you have that relationship already, right? If you don't have a good relationship with your 15-year-old, it's too late to really influence them to making some critical life choices in this moment. You might can start the relationship now and influence them later on down the road, but you're not going to have a great amount of influence today if you haven't started building relationships yesterday, or quite a few yesterdays over time. So don't beat yourself up if that's a scenario you have at this moment. But my point here is, be intentional about building that connection skill, not the communication skill. There's probably lots of encouragement or practice. There's certainly lots, if if you're learning to write effectively, if you're having to take English, you're like learning to write the different essays and where do the commas go. And I mean, that's all focused on the communication, and that will help you increase influence, but not nearly as much as if you start to work on your ability to connect with other people. And, one of the things I talk about in Straight Talk, the power of effective communication, is this starts very fundamentally with learning someone's name. And I know a lot of people are like, I'm not great at names. Well, notice that you don't usually have trouble remembering the names of people who are important to you. I bet you remember your boss's name. You probably remember your spouse's name, your kids' names, right? saying I'm not great at names is not an excuse, because you are great at names. You're great at remembering the names of the people who are important to you. You might not be good at remembering the names of the people who aren't important to you because they're not important to you. Mm. So that shows if you don't value someone, you're not making a lot of effort to remember their name. And that's something that you can't fake it till you make it with people, right? If they don't feel like they matter to you, you're not going to have a lot of influence with them. So be intentional now about starting that relationship, and that starts with learning someone's name, learning about them, learning the small things about them. Maybe that's hopes and dreams, or what flavor of ice cream they like. I don't know, but you've got to have a relationship to influence someone at a high level. What that looks like, you get to decide and they get to decide, right? What that relationship is. And I talk a lot in Straight Talk about how to use questions to establish that common ground and interests and things like that. But these are all things that you can apply, these principles that you can apply to increase your influence. But I guarantee you, until you are intentional about those connection skills, it's going to be, even if you're a fantastic communicator, if you don't have the ability to connect with people, you're not going to be able to be very effective and therefore very successful, right? But there again, we spend so much more time focusing on the communication skills and not nearly enough time focusing on the connection skills, the relationship side of things, of actually getting to know people for who they are, not what they can do for us. And I know this takes time, this takes energy. Sometimes you're like, I'm in a hurry, I don't have time to learn somebody's name. Maybe I don't have time to ask them how they really are or how they're a kid. There again, we can make excuses or we can make something happen, but we cannot make it happen while we're making excuses. But taking ownership for increasing influence by establishing that relationship and building trust, and doing it because it's the right thing to do, not because we're trying to manipulate somebody into doing something for us. Most of us kind of naturally are nice to people when we're trying to get something from them. That's manipulation, right? If you're just trying to be nice to someone and increase your trust or influence in the relationship because you want something from them, that's manipulation. That's manipulative. It's really, what I'm talking about here is really actually valuing the relationship with the person because you value the person. And it's not about what they can do for you in the moment. It's just truly establishing that connection. And when you do that, it's going to increase your influence at a whole entirely new level. But you can't wait to do that, and you can't do it for the wrong reason, because people always know when you're trying to manipulate them. They might not know right off the bat. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But sooner or later, if you're trying to manipulate people, that will come out, right? But what I'm talking about here is true, authentic influence based on the relationship, based on you valuing that person at a great level, right? And when you value the person as a person, then you do take more effort and energy to build the relationship. You'll learn their name. You'll learn some things about them. You'll start to ask them how they're doing. You'll care about that. And you're investing in them at a different level when you do that, and that will increase your influence. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But so much of the time we have to be intentional about focusing on that, because it's easy to go through the motions. I mean, so much of our life is on autopilot, and certainly that's true when it comes to our interactions with people. And we create little habits of how we respond, or ways that we interact with people. um Different relationships have a different level of interaction, or maybe different responses or different things that and how we behave. And that's okay. It's just, there again, realizing the power of being intentional here with developing our skills. And you can start with anybody, right? You can start building a relationship with just getting to know someone, just learning somebody's name that you interact with. Like maybe when you go to the grocery store and you check out, and you always check out at pretty much the same day, pretty much the same time of day. Maybe it's usually the same cashier on duty, right? Get to know that person. Practice building a relationship with that person who can do nothing for you. And interestingly enough, as you increase your ability to connect with people, you will increase your ability to influence people. And at the end of the day, we all want more influence. Until next time.
Start increasing your influence and maximizing your potential with Ria's audiobooks. Available at audible.com, amazon.com, and iBooks. Please visit riastory.com to learn about Ria's books, resources, speaking, and training programs. Thanks for listening.